We got Tracey Dolan joining us today. Michael, you're joining us from North Carolina. I hope everything's fine in North
South
Carolina.
Carolina.
South
South
Carolina.
Carolina.
South
Everything's
Carolina.
peachy down here. It's
And
150
no,
degrees and 200% humidity. So it's
no more sort of man-made weather issues taking
there's no
place there. No,
man-made
no,
weather
no.
going on
We throw
anywhere.
a can of
Not,
something, and tornado,
Uh-oh, it's a whole other debate.
no,
tornado in a
no,
can.
don't do any cloud seeding down here. We just have normal hurricanes and storms, but everything is peachy. How are you guys?
Not bad. Katie, Colorado. How's it going over there?
It's doing great, and I'm so excited to have Tracy on today. I just love her. I love her work. I think it's more relevant now than ever. So I
Yeah.
can't wait to dive into some of these. We're hearing that phrase everywhere, right? The psionics. But yeah, she's been at this for a very long time, and I can't wait to get insights from Tracy.
Remember Hooked on Phonics? This was like back in the 90s. There was like a kids education program.
Yeah.
Like Hooked on Phonics worked for me. So I'm hooked on psionics. That's
Psionics.
what I think should be the new thing, right? Just teach
Right.
kids how to be psionics now. Yeah, I'm actually really happy that Tracy can join us today. She's been covering this subject of consciousness or remote viewing for quite some time, even when the subject was taboo in the UAP field, for crying out loud, which is weird. Nothing should be taboo in our field of research, but unfortunately it is. But she's done so much great work, and I feel like she's very shy. She doesn't want to put it too much out there, but I think she should, because what she's done is contributed big time to not only studying, working with people, and the amount of time she spent at like Monroe Institute, and just get it out there, get your information out there. And she really needs to. And I'm really excited about this. She's joining us from New York, and I'm looking forward to picking her brain about it. Is there any questions, Michael, you're looking forward to asking her? Anything that's sort of been bugging
Oh,
you?
I want to ask her about her meditation practice. That's one of the things that is increasingly interesting to me, but doesn't get a lot of play in the UAP space because we're so interested in like what the phenomena itself is. But on the other side of these experiences are all these practices and ways of managing your own mind and experience that kind of give rise to them, or at least open you up to them. And she seems like she has a lot of experience with that. So yeah, I'm interested in that line of questioning.
Pretty cool. And Katie, you've known Tracy for some time now. Is there a question that you've always wanted to ask her, or maybe something, a clarification on something?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to her about all the new work of Dr. Hennessy Powell and others and Lisa Strickland about the telepathy tapes and how all that plays a role in all of this. So,
See, I have no, I'm telepathetic. I'm not telepathic. So I have no abilities on that, but I'm so impressed with people that can have abilities or to at least practice their whole life to get to where they are. So yeah, I'm looking forward to picking her brain on this. So without further ado, guys, here's our episode with Tracey Dolan. We're back with another interesting topic today. We have Tracey Dolan, who is joining us today. Tracey, welcome. I believe you're from New York State right now, somewhere in the vicinity
That's
there.
where I'm living currently. We'll go with that.
Seriously, it is awesome for you to join us. I know we were talking a bit at Contact in the Desert about having you come back on and talk to us about your work and of course your life and everything that you've accomplished so far in this field of study, which we're starting to hear more about consciousness and remote viewing. Psionics has become a hot topic recently in the news. You got Ross Coulthard and News Nation, of course, reporting on all of these wonderful new mental abilities that supposedly we have or always have had. But you've been investigating this and researching this a long time, even before this was even remotely on the table of something that Ross Coulthard could touch on. Because even though we had UAPs and aliens, the fact of talking about the consciousness aspect or remote viewing, that still remained taboo. I believe you mentioned that before the episode recording, that it's sort of just remained on this sort of like, let's not touch this shelf of
Mhm.
ufology, and yet you're working in this field, and you must have felt at some point that this would either make it or break it. Either it would make it into the community's consciousness or just completely disappear off the table. And yay, it has made it into more prominent status, if you will. I think this year's Contact in the Desert was, I would say, predominantly about remote viewing, about the abilities of the mind. There was a lot of stuff on, the usual suspects, if you will. But I thought that was fantastic that, it's becoming more prevalent. And you've been a pioneer in that. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, Tracey. And I thought I would ask my first question. We'll kick it off to Michael next, Katie after. But how long have you been working in this field? And what have you seen over the last, I would say probably, let's say the last 3 years regarding your field of work being more noticeable now in or recognized in the field of ufology?
Well, I guess unofficially, this has been my life. And I think that's the case with a lot of people. And they haven't been talking about it because it hasn't been that accepted. It hasn't been sort of safe to talk about, right? There's a lot more to lose if you do talk about it. So officially, I guess I struggle to find where I make that distinction, actually, officially and unofficially, because it's been going on for so long. Like, this has been a big part of my life since I was 6 years old, but really came on the scene at the time of becoming an emerging adult. So in the 20s is when it really started showing up. But I think when you feel kind of on the outside of something, you either just carry on or you decide to kind of study yourself, And so that was always my approach when I had no one to talk to about this. And so that's why I went into psychology. That's why I went into medical anthropology and world religions and psychology of religion, and everywhere I could sort of look under look under something and say, hey, is there something here? Cultural anthropology, you name it. And without fully going directly into your question, I just want to say that what was most interesting to me in medical anthropology, which is one of the things I did in the latest part of my degree, was that all of these things that we're talking about are normal in many other places of the world. This is considered a normal part of your health system, right? All of the transpersonal aspects, your dreams, out-of-body experiences, and your death experiences, I'll be conservative and say suspected contact experiences, all of lucid dreams, all of this is considered part of your holistic health system. And so for me, that was one of the greatest permission slips to just sort of unapologetically start to recognize what I had seen happening in myself and what I had seen happening in other people in some schools of mine that I attended. And so it's always been there as my primary interest, always. And going through academia, was my attempt to study and normalize it for myself first, make sure that I was of stable mind, and learn more about it. Well, I was trying to figure out how academia could teach me more about it, and it really does lack. Like, it could color in some outer areas, at least where I went, right? But the thing that hit it the most directly, other than taking transpersonal psychology, but I was on the East Coast and I didn't have all those options, medical anthropology and how it normalized it. And it more than normalized it. It made it feel like a responsibility that we should be taking on, with our children, with our nuclear families, extended families, our friends, a new way to do therapy, just new considerations about who we really are, a more normal, holistic outlook of who we really are. So, sorry, that's a long intro
And
there.
Tracy, when you say a more holistic, so are you saying according to more like Western points of view, like the way we live here in the West compared to maybe in the
Sure.
East or other countries?
Yeah, yeah. So typically in the West, right, we will compartmentalize, like when we need to go to the doctor and it's our ear, we have to go to an ear, nose, and throat specialist. Or if it's this, we have to go to this. Like often, you have something going on in your esophagus and you go and you go through all the motions to get that area of your body looked at in a lab, empty it out, look at it in the lab. But if there is anything showing slightly above, slightly below, they don't do it. Like you have to go to a separate doctor, go through a separate system. So everything is so compartmentalized. I mean, there's a reason so that they can try to specialize in those areas. However, when we go to a psychologist in the West, again, I'm generalizing, not all psychologists, but and psychiatrists, we generally can't speak freely about these types of things. So that's what I'm referring to. They're not really recognized. If you're having, you know, suspected contact dreams, like forget about it, right? People aren't going to talk about that unless they are feeling completely safe and the therapist has a reputation that they're open to the possibility and not hostile to it. Right. So that's what I'm referring to. So
Right.
yeah, kind of East versus West, but that's even saying that is generalizing, a little bit too much. But now with, of course, with the telepathy tapes and Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell's work, it's opening up yet another door to this discussion on a far larger level and more compassionate kind of conversation about all of this. So it's taking what I was sort of studying and experiencing myself, to be honest, and making the conversation way more open. And as you mentioned, this was the first time at Contact in the Desert that I saw a huge shift because often I was talking about remote viewing, but part of the reason I was only talking about remote viewing was because it was a little safer than going into everything else. Um, and but this year, there's been a real handshake between abductions and UAP and consciousness that's completely different. It used to be kind of the fringe of the UFO conferences, remote viewing alone, right? We're rarely ever talking about telepathy unless it happens to come up in a presentation where people are talking about abductions and they're saying it was a telepathic sort of communication. But really, yeah, it was really kind of off to the side. And now you're right. It was very dominant and it was wonderful. I mean, I just absolutely loved it because really these things all tie together. I mean, everything is happening through the perception of our minds, right? So now that we're marrying these, we can kind of open that dialogue and open the thinking more. And I think another thing it's doing is helping people talking about it is helping people recognize it in their own lives, which will help take the dialogue farther.
Right.
Yeah. So anyhow, sorry, I just rambled. If I did not answer your
No, you
question,
you
feel free to
did,
ask
you
it
did, and
again.
and you're right. It's more prevalent now more than ever. I mean, like I said, in the news, contact, like we start talking about it more and more. Michael, off to you, my man.
So I see this like kind of trajectory of like people in the UAP sphere are starting to acknowledge other dimensions of the sort of weird experiences that people have. But it's like very incremental. It's like, okay, well, we'll
Yeah.
admit that there was some like telepathic contact experience. And we'll admit that like remote viewers, because like some remote viewers have like viewed UFO bases and stuff.
Right.
But it seems to me like there's just a whole smear, a whole gradient of like really weird stuff out there that doesn't have anything in principle to do with the UAP subject, but that's just kind of like the trajectory of how we're getting to it.
Yeah, I
But we
think so.
have to talk about it in that way here in this conversation. Like, what do you see as the whole gamut of interesting and strange things to do with the mind? And what experiences have you had that led you to be so interested in these things, if you're okay talking about those personal experiences?
Yeah. So what was the first part of your question again? It was,
Like, what's the whole smear of like of stuff? It's not just
mm,
remote viewing. It's not just like some
no.
abduction experiences have telepathic elements to it. There's other
Yeah.
stuff like lucid dreaming or astral travel and things like that. Like, what are all the things that you're interested in, even if they don't have anything to do with UAP?
Well, I mean, I'm always hesitant to put it under this umbrella, but it's the easiest umbrella to put it under is psychic phenomenon, which include it's actually expanded perception, I think is a better umbrella, that has less stigma and is more true. Expanded consciousness, expanded perception, our ability to perceive things that are outside of what we would call consensus reality. So that would include, lucid dreams, out of bodies, near death experiences, suspected contact experiences. Again, I'm just saying that to be conservative. I'm calling it that. Abductions, precognitive dreams, precognitive visions. And I mentioned that to answer the second part of your question. I've had so many things, but I don't talk about them a lot. I talked about some of them in my most recent lecture. So I'm just getting used to talking about them more. But out of order, because a lot of things happened leading up to this. But a perfect example is, and a lot of people have probably had things like this. My father was 67 and he was full of life. I mean, he was skidooing across Canada, working for Habitat for Humanity. He's working too. He's refereeing hockey games for juniors. He's running this, running that. Like there's no slowing down. He was full on. And one day I was in the middle of the day, lying down in a bed and just merely staring at the wall. Just, I think I wanted to sleep but couldn't. I wasn't in any sort of drifting state, hypnagogic state yet, or anything like that. I was perfectly awake. But I was staring at this blank wall and I saw this vision. I don't even like to use that word too much. I actually call it an overlay because I think it's more accurate. Like, if we all know this is our main reality, I was able to tell the difference, like this was something else that overlaid on top of it, right?
It's not like a hallucination, like you weren't delusionally believing that you were seeing something that wasn't there. It's like a different
Correct.
order of perception.
Correct. Yeah, so that's why I like to call it an overlay. I could, I was aware of both at the same time. And I saw my father sitting in the back of my car and smiling at me in this very unusual way. And that was all that happened. But this knowingness came over me that he was saying goodbye and that this was final and this was it. It was so strong. So it was just very simple, very basic, but all the information was there. I immediately called my sister, who sometimes has dreams, and asked her, have you had any dreams about Dad? And she said yes, she'd had 2 dreams that he died, but she ignored them. So I called my mom, and I was not going to say this to my mom. I just said, how's his health? I had this dream, just wondering how his health was. And she said he just had a full bill of health. He'd just gone to the doctor. He was good, and he was out doing this and fixing that. And I think a couple of months later, I just buried it, because you don't know that this is going to be anything.
Right.
I think you have to err on the side of not thinking that and then see what happens, right? What else are you going to do?
Yeah,
So
what do
that's
you
what
do
I
with it?
did.
Even if you don't bury it, what else are you going to do with it? Like, you got to
Yeah,
get rid of it.
exactly. And you can't, I feel like it was irresponsible to upset my mom and then have her thinking this all the time, you know? And so a couple months later, we hear we're talking about something. My dad just mentioned in passing, like he'd skipped a meal or something. I mean, it was so minor. It wasn't saying he wasn't feeling well or anything like that. And I just had this feeling, you know, and this whole feeling came over me. The whole thing came back, and I knew. I called my sister and said, "We have got to go there. I'm got to be there in 2 days, and we need to have no regrets." I just knew in every fiber of my body, even though he was perfectly fine. And I remember my partner at the time furious with me for doing this and thinking this, because he just said, "You can't, you know, this is irresponsible. You can't bury someone before they're dead." You know, like this very
Yeah.
irresponsible, which I agree, you know, but sometimes those deeper feelings are really important, especially when they're very, I don't even have a word for it, but like full, like they fill you in a certain way, you know, a knowingness that's in every fiber of you. So we did this. And by the time we got there in 2 days, my father couldn't speak. And he was still walking around. He couldn't speak. But long story short, you know, he lasted a couple months, but we found out he had pancreatic cancer with no symptoms. So he went from, you know, 100 to 0, you know, like, and was gone like that. But I was weirdly ready for it because I feel like in the part that I could not perceive, but I just knew, there was all of this information that was driving me. That I already had settled something with him, that I was able to take care of the family. I was able to handle it. I don't know. It's really hard to describe, but it changed me. You know, each one of these things has changed me, but this changed me on many levels because well, one way it changed me was thinking, okay, he was alive. Like sometimes people will have what they consider a visitation after someone passes, right? Or at the time when they pass. But this was while he's alive and in the middle of the day, some part of him that we might say is independent seeming somehow communicated with me. So to me, if that's true, that implies there's us, ego, self sitting here talking to each other, and there's a more expanded part of ourselves that is capable of communicating on a larger scale. And once you start to look at this and things that have happened in your life that you might not have recognized or allowed yourself to recognize, you start to really think about that part. What is that part that, you know, there's people could say, oh, it's a soul, it's a this, it's a that, right? But without labeling it, it would seem there is that expanded part of us that is communicating. It's intelligent beyond what we know. It's warning us of life changes, of major events. So what is that? And then when you go into the other modalities, so I had these things happening spontaneously, but in part of my explorations, I would go to these schools of mind and I would try all the modalities. Honestly, I've been trained in every psychic freaking thing there is, because I needed to know. And ultimately, you start to see it's almost like with hypnosis or just relaxing into different brain states. All you're doing is you're expanding past this limited self and you're identifying with that self, it would seem, you know?
Mm.
And then once you identify as that self, there's more access in every direction to things. It's just, I think the limits are what you have set up for yourself or what you haven't been able to take down yet because you just don't know or you don't know how, you know? And so it's experiences like that that have really driven me, and each one drives me beyond. And some of my earlier ones were more, when I didn't even know what these words were, like kind of mediumship things, where I see, you can tell I don't talk about these as much. Um,
You're in a safe space. Like I tell
yeah,
my kids, you're in a
yeah,
safe
yeah,
space.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So for example, being in a yoga class, and at the end of the yoga class, there's sometimes a relaxing part, a vinyasana, they call it in some classes. And it's just, you're just lying there and you're relaxing at the end for maybe 10 minutes. And suddenly, again, one of these overlays happening but here I am in a situation where I'm with strangers, right? Something opening up on the ceiling, and I see this overlay of this man wearing the old sort of train hats, those train engineer hats.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Little
Yeah, that you
caps that
kind
they
of,
wore, right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, the little caps with the little brim. They're very sort of specific.
Striped hats. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yep,
Gotcha.
yep. So this older gentleman, and he's looking down a track. And then there's two other older gentlemen with him. They're all looking down this track. And I mean, I see this so clearly, like when I saw my dad looking down the track. And suddenly the man turns and he looks at me, and he just gives me this look like I should know what he means. I don't. I'm just observing this. You know, just all I do is I just watch it and that try to remember. And so I come out of this and I think, oh, great. And I make this little bargain with whatever. I say, okay, if the situation sets up, because I don't know any of these people, including the teacher, if the situation sets up where I'm left with one person or the teacher and one person, I will do this. And if I am not, I will not say a word, because this was not about me, because I don't relate to this at all, but it came in so strong. I've learned to trust this. When it comes in with this real clarity, it's I will say, along with the feeling of having to catch a bus. I feel like if you see something when you're around people, I wouldn't feel right to go up and just say something to people. But if it comes with a feeling, that's what I've learned, like an urgency, then I pay more attention and I might entertain that. So in this particular case, the situation set up. There was one person with the teacher, and I said, forgive me and stop me if this is weird or uncomfortable. And I tell her, and I had, the craziest reaction. She's like, oh my God. And it turned out her stepfather was on his deathbed, and he worked on the railroad tracks. And his three best friends who he worked on the railroad tracks with had just passed. And she felt this was the thing because he wasn't letting go, and they were struggling with this. And she felt for some reason, this was something he needed to know. And, I never saw that person again, but if it helped, amazing. And why do these things happen? I have no idea. I think something in me has just been like a touch open. And so these things can come through. And I just want to add this. I have a million stories like this.
Bring him on. Bring him on. That's what
Really?
it's for.
I don't know. There's so many. But yeah, it's weird because I never would have told all these stories before. This is definitely a new place, but I'm saying them because I'm encouraging other people to recognize these things that are happening to them. And I think, Diane Powell's work is as well. The telepathy tapes are as well. And it's in, all just about 100% of near-death experiences, all telepathic, abduction experiences, contact experiences, it's telepathic. And then telepathic to me just leads to this larger part of ourselves that is using a different language. And is that our common language with everything out there? Not just ET, but everything, the expanded consciousness of those that have passed. Is it is it all the same? Is this the universal language? Because our language is a man-made construct over top of what? And so I think, what if this is the key? This is the key. It's sitting here, and everything in the world seems to be going against learning about this, with AI and everything.
Yeah. Well, it's
We're,
numbing all of our senses. It's saying don't pay
yeah,
attention to your physical realm, plug yourself into the matrix. It's much more pleasant, right?
right, totally. So I guess for me, I don't want people to lose sight of this because I think it's in everybody's life.
Yeah.
I don't think it's happening in anyone it's not anyone who's special. It's not about that. This is about all of us, 100%, all of humanity. Um, I was just saying to someone, have you guys seen the movie Arrival?
Yes,
Yes.
and the
Great
short story
movie.
is also phenomenal.
Yeah, I love that movie. And one day I was just thinking about um, The Gift. Okay, possible spoiler alert here for people who haven't seen it.
Oh, it's been out for what,
I
almost 10
know,
years now?
I know it's such a good movie. I've seen it
Yeah,
like
it's
three
so
times.
good. Yeah.
Okay, good. Um, Sometimes I think about the gift that they were given at the end. They were given a gift, and the thing about the gift was that every nation was given something equally, and they just couldn't figure it out, and they couldn't realize this. And I was just thinking, what if that gift, what could be the thing that we've all been given? A lot of us do believe time is simultaneous and it's nonlinear and all of that anyhow. But what if it was this universal language? What if that was a thing that we all have that's absolutely identical? We identify with all these different things on the surface, but underneath we have this beautiful expanded self that makes us kind of all the same in a way and connects us with everything else out there on more of a normal equal playing field. I shouldn't say equal, but seemingly, I'll just say that. I love thought experiments, and I was just thinking, what if we have something here and we're heading in a totally opposite direction, but what if it's that? You
Yeah.
know, what if that's what we already have, and we already have
It's
at
scary
the
if we
same
lose
level?
it. It's be scary if we lose it. Katie, go
I
ahead.
know. That's part of the reason why I did my lecture on what I did and why I'm talking about these things, because it is going to be tempting to lose ourselves to artificial intelligence. Oh,
100%.
I mean, what happens though if, the sun throws off a massive flare and, we lose that grid, all these things that we're used to? How do we communicate? And we've been shown many ways, and, Diane's showing us new ways, and telepathy tapes are showing us new ways, that we can reach out and communicate, like, not just autistic non-speakers, but we're learning that people who are non-speaking because they're in comas, like our moms, our dads, in comas. There's all sorts of non-speaking stories. We just weren't paying attention before, and we weren't looking there. We didn't know that they were actually there, right? We're just comparing to what we've been taught on this surface level, but they're there.
See,
They're
I believe in that because when Lisa's mad at me, I know. She's not speaking to me. I know what's up. Katie, go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, that's a perfect segue. And Tracy, thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for opening up and sharing these very profound personal stories. And I'm so glad that you're doing that. It takes courage. And I mean, your story with your father is so touching, and sorry
Thank
that you
you.
lost him so young. It's
Oh,
so sad.
thank you.
But you bring up the telepathy tapes, and it's kind of opening the doors to this phenomenon that you and so many others kind of intuitively knew was happening most of your life, as you said, since age 6. And I want to talk a little about you. You mentioned the nonverbal autistic children, but
Hmm.
can you speak a little bit about? I feel, and I couldn't agree with you more, that we all have these gifts and we all can learn and train to tap into them more. But it seems to me that there are those, for whatever reason, whether it's through near death or trauma or, your disassociation, when you go through some of these schools that you have, and you've been through many, and I want to talk to you more about that too. But can you talk a little bit? It's not just the nonverbal population that have to tap into these senses that, because they're nonverbal, but it's this other group of people as well, this disassociation piece that seem to open up these channels. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that might be?
Ooh, so many things to talk about. Okay, so why disassociation, maybe?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I could talk about this as an authority at all, but it seems to me that, yeah, people who've had trauma or of some sort, or, including near-death experiences, it seems as though the ability to disassociate has opened an easy pathway somehow. A good example is Joe McMoneagle,
Hmm.
one of the most famous remote viewers. And Joe, I think, fell out of a helicopter and broke his back, and he definitely had a different near-death experience that was not associated with that. I think outside of a restaurant. But and Joe is this profound remote viewer with profound abilities to bring back very detailed, accurate information. And so he's a good example. And I see it time and time again with even my own teacher of remote viewing had multiple near-death experiences. And I think he feels this is part of why he's really good at it. It's Paul Elder in BC, actually, Canada.
Nice.
And I think he had 4 near-death experiences, including when he was a child. And so one of the things that can happen in his remote views is he can slide into an out-of-body experience very easily. And if you are able to do that, you can get very actionable information, clear information that a lot of remote viewers can't quite go to that level, because they can travel. And I mean, I guess I'm getting kind of
Actually, well, while you're
complicated with
there,
this.
that yeah, what's the difference between astral projection and, let's say, remote viewing? What are the differences between the
Okay.
two?
Okay, yeah, this is a good question to help me clarify this. So, yeah, if you are going astral traveling slash out of body, okay, we'll make those the same. You are, when this happens, you are no longer associating with the body sitting at the table remote viewing, right? Your consciousness goes to the place and you're not really aware of this body. When you're remote viewing, it's you're sending your consciousness somewhere else. You are still aware of this body. So
Okay.
you're writing, you're very physically aware. Robert Monroe used to call this kind of like going out of phase. And you can go out of phase slightly and get information, or more. And out of phase to him, I hope I don't butcher this, but it's, in a way, it's if you imagine the brainwave scale of beta being the awake state all the way down to delta, the sleep state. Going out of phase with this reality being beta, we identify that as beta. Slightly out of phase might go into alpha, and you'll be able to get some good information. Theta is deeper. You could probably get deeper information. It's associated with deeper altered states, and even towards delta. Sometimes people can have some delta in there, and they're able to really kind of reach out. But all of it, if you're not going out of body, is your instead of saying out of phase, I'm going to use different words. I suppose in a certain way, you're sharing your consciousness in two places, but you never lose the awareness of here. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Is lucid dreaming typically in theta state when you lucid dream, or is that more delta?
Well,
lucid-
lucid dreaming's interesting because when you're dreaming, when you're asleep, you're in delta, right? Your waves, your brain waves are really slow. And your thinking part of your brain, your executive functioning goes offline. Your seeing occipital cortex goes offline, right? Because you're asleep. But the most fascinating thing to me about lucid dreaming, the first time I heard this, I've never been able to get this out of my mind. The most fascinating thing is if you wake up into a lucid dream, your brain waves show faster than the awake state that we are experiencing right now, but you're asleep. And your occipital cortex, or your responsible for seeing, your vision, comes back online, and your executive functioning comes back online. So those things are back online in a lucid dream. And so, just looking at brain scans, there's something fascinating going on there, that it's working faster than this awake state. And that has always fascinated me.
Yeah, that's why you can wake up and feel more exhausted from a lucid dream than your waking state of life. Like sometimes you wake up like, oh, like you just lived a whole other lifetime.
Right. And
Makes
people
sense.
describe it as hyper realistic, and this is probably why, right? Those words, you hear people use them all the time, and I do with certain things too. Even people who don't lucid dream, you can have a lucidity happen in moments, or you can have a global lucidity start to happen, right? But it's there. Something is going on when we are in some kind of other state. And so that always leads me to the question of, are we accessing something? Are we? I mean, I'm not convinced that we aren't. I can't say for sure that we are, but I'm not convinced that we aren't, especially when people have precognition and things come true. People dreaming famously with 9/11 and a study they did on train crashes. They found that a huge majority of the people on those days before a train crash, for example, had some kind of dream or warning of not to go, and they just could not bring themselves to go, right? And when they did the study, they even accounted for the days with the worst weather, and it was still fewer people before a train crash, for example, than a day when there was terrible weather. Like they were the lowest claimed tickets before major events. So something is going on. There is some information there. So I just can't buy that it's a mishmash of the day, or sometimes it is, but not always, not always.
You had brought up a point about seeing your dad in the back seat of a car looking at you and smiling. And with remote viewing, we're starting to understand now that you can actually, there's no date and time. You can actually remote view in the future, in the past. You could put yourself in a room in 1956 and look through the drawers and the dressers. Like, it's crazy what people can do. But if we're able to do that in a remote viewing, I'm just wondering if we're able to do that from out of body experience. If time is nothing, we could remote view or put ourselves in any times, or times scale, if you will, of humanity, visit dreams and all that. And I find that very fascinating because I don't know if you guys can hear my French bulldog snoring. She's quite loud. I hope she doesn't come through on the mic. It's not me. I don't have sleep apnea while I'm awake. But I find that fascinating that there's no, it's not like you can only visit something in real time, it's that time is irrelevant once you step out of your mind. The only
Yeah.
thing that is sort of slave to this linear sense of time is these bodies aging. That's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because everything else, we're starting to understand that, look, I'm the driver inside the car. I'm not the car. This car will
Yeah.
break down and the driver will have to come out one day. And when you're talking about these experiences that you've had at a young age, or people that have had these um, phenomenal experiences after near death, is it possible that from abductees to near death experiences, um, it's because they've been behind the veil of the play. Like they realize that they're not the play, that there's stagehands behind the play, that there's props behind the play, that there's an actual whole world outside of the play. And that's what allows people to sort of realize that this reality is not what we think it is. It's not the play we're all convinced that it is. It's something far deeper and meaningful than this. So I'm just wondering, like, where does your ideas and thoughts, when you think about all this as a whole, like, where does that lead you as a philosophy?
That's a big question.
Boom! That's what I ask. Big question. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I love thinking about this stuff. It's really, where do I want to go with this? Um, Overall, I feel I can pretty easily conclude we're more than our physical bodies. Um, I feel I have had experiences where I can say, even when I can't fully convince myself, a part of me knows that we are so deeply connected to each other. It also makes me think about my words more carefully because we're so connected. It makes me think about my actions more consciously and carefully if we're all connected. I'm not fully answering your question, but you can re-ask parts and
Oh,
I'll
for sure.
probably
That
be
was
able
a
to
big
answer it
loaded
more.
question. So it was a hearty meal. So yeah.
Yeah. There's so many stories that have popped up in my head that I'm like, which ones do I want to address? Michael,
Well,
do you want to like hone in?
yeah, but I
Were
would say
you just
maybe
about to say
just
something?
like on your lifetime, your experiences, where it's led you, like from your own perception of the experiences that you've had, if you were to sum it up so far, what is your like spiritual take? Because that's, we talk about body, mind, and soul. So I think that's very important. The spiritual aspect of this is not
Mm-hmm.
the just the intellectual, but like,
Mm-hmm.
does that make you more spiritual, less spiritual?
Oh
What would you
yeah.
say? Yeah.
Oh yeah. More spiritual. I think I've always been very spiritual. Part of that, I think, is when you feel like you're living your life and you assume nobody understands, but turns out like most people feel like this, right? But for me, early on, it became a spiritual thing. And that's always been my center. It's what I default back to. It's strengthened in my 30s when I had panic attacks, just on top of all of this stuff, because I really came to the realization that even if we are connected, it can feel very alone. And it's up to us to build a spiritual resilience because as much as we can recognize that we're connected, we've still chosen to do this on some level, it seems. And we still have traumas and we still have these individual experiences. And the only thing that I feel like I can truly control is my inner sense of self and how I perceive and navigate this world. And so I would say year after year, my spiritual core grows and grows as I recognize that. And things like, being with my dad on his deathbed, again, another deeper level because I thought about because he couldn't speak. He went in and out of being able to speak, but again, at the end, he couldn't speak. And I just thought there were all these things that he was unable to say. It was clear. And how much it was seemed to be bothering him, that he had spent his whole life planning, and this just came. It seemed like it surprised him like 20 years early, you know? And so I always try to think about my life looking back. And even if I have the most expanded mindset, this is what's going to matter, right? At the end of my life, it's going to matter on two levels. It's going to matter how I navigated it on the inside, and it's going to matter how I navigated it on the outside. And so I think we simultaneously have to carry these two attitudes, the one where we look at life individually and the one where we can have this more expanded outlook, knowing that we're all connected. And we do the best we can. We could control the things we can, and, try to let go of the things we can't, and do our best to, be wise enough to know the difference, the serenity prayer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said.
So it's a tough thing to answer, but I think ultimately that's how I feel. I love the exploration of who we are underneath it. I talk about these things because I think that's the most exciting, fresh way to look at ourselves and to look at life, is by exploring the things that we have denied for all these years. I mean, it's a beautiful part of who we all are. And even though life's stories are very interesting and compelling, this other dimension is beautiful. It's so beautiful, and it's so wise. It's so wise. And so getting to see people talk about that inner wisdom, it just really compels me in every way. So I just hope that people will start coming forward with more and more of these stories. They're happening all over the place to people. And even people who think they aren't happening, I swear to God, they're happening. It's just, we get so busy in life. I truly believe that we don't notice. There's only so much attention management we can attention we can give to certain things, right? Like you can't really split your attention all over the place. So a lot of people will say remote viewing is attention management. It's true. So if you want to find more of these things in your life, you have to manage that attention to be looking at those things. And I think a really easy way for people, if that's too much, is just look towards your dreams, is the easiest in.
You mean literal dream?
Literal dreams. Look towards the literal dreams and remembering them. And in doing so, in the morning, just taking the time to remember them, you are training your attention that what happens during the night is important to me. I really believe if you just get up and go get a coffee in the morning, you are telling your ego, your day self, it doesn't matter what happens at night, right? It's not important to me. But if you actually create this sort of handshake in the morning between the night experience and the day experience, you will start to see this sort of bridging, and just spending the time writing that. I think, that, at least for me, I can speak for myself here, while I'm doing that and my brain is slowing down and relaxing before I start the day, insights start popping about other things or things I remember. And I'm going to go all over the place here. At the Monroe Institute, the debriefs after you do a session are so important, like in the Gateway experience, are so important, because this is kind of what's happening. People are sitting down together. They're telling what happened in their session. For some people, they feel nothing happened. But when they're listening and relaxing and they're in that state where they're not involved in their day yet, boom, it pops. They'll remember experiences that they had that upon waking they had no idea, no remembrance of, and they will just pop out. It's a thing. It happens all the time there. And I think it happens in our daily lives. And I think it's just a simple way. Like people will say meditate. For a lot of people, that's, not realistic, right? I'm a huge meditator, but most people are not. And dreams is just a nice gateway in to get that attention management going, a calm transition between night and day where you can start to examine and remember things and use the wisdom of remote viewing with targeting and intentions, and say to yourself, write it down that you want to remember some of these things that have happened in your life. And just, if it's important, aim to notice more deeply in your life, like slow things down and notice them more. And I swear, my whole life has been about this. And the mind yields. If you ask it and you want it, it might not yield at first how you want it to, but it will start to offer things up how it needs to for you,
So
It will
it's personally sort of tailored.
Yes,
Nobody has
very,
the same
very
experience when they
right.
try to do this.
Right, like lucid dreams are a perfect example. Like only 20% of the population can really lucid dream. People can do it in gradations, but you really don't need to lucid dream. You can have like I was saying before, you can have these lucid components that happen. Or like if that's your intention, I want to lucid dream, for a lot of people, they want that, right? So you make that intention, you write it in your journal, you establish for yourself why you want this. That's the most important thing you can do in the psychology of change is why. Really figure that out. Why do you want to know? Because you believe there's wisdom in the night that you can use for your life. Is that why? And if that's so, write it down and think about that. And then if nothing happens in the first week, notice what is happening, because there could be like the slightest changes that are just, in your dreams. So you want to notice, are the colors brighter, are, anything, because it could take weeks for your particular psyche to unravel to where it's supposed to be. Like for me, I wanted to have more out-of-body experiences. It drove me crazy that I couldn't. But then, in wanting this for years, I discovered I had this other weird ability of something I could do, And so I believe this is the case with everyone. We're all so unique. We're all neurodivergent in our own way, and it's just seeing how it unravels for you. So for me, I kept looking at this thing I wanted, couldn't get it, but didn't notice for the longest time something else that was happening. I'm actually really, really strong at being here and sending another part of me somewhere else and really seeing. But I was so obsessed with wanting to get out of the body,
Like
I
a
didn't notice
dualistic thing, right?
I was
Yeah.
doing this kind of, it's the same type of thing. And I was able to do it to quite an extent. And, but it just wasn't good enough to me, it is now. I learned that. And now I love the way. I embrace it and I love it. I lean into it and there's more there. And so I'm just using examples of how we want what other people have, but it might look different for us. And hypnotherapy is the same. If you go there because you want to stop smoking or you want to stop this or you want to stop that, I went to it because I had a debilitating fear of the dark. And I remember her saying the psyche will unravel in the way it does. And so for me, the fear of the dark didn't go away. But what happened was I got the best sleeps of my life. That's what started happening because I was hypervigilant all the time, And so it was unraveling in its own way and working its way there, which I'm much better. I'm not there yet, but I'm much better. So I'm going
It's
all over the place, you guys.
the fear of the dark is an actual fear that adults still have. It's not something that I've ever dealt with, but I understand the vulnerability state of, when people go to bed, it's completely dark. And if, abductees or whatever, obviously you would have a good freaking valid reason to be afraid to go to bed at night. We got time for two last questions for Michael and Katie. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah. So when you talk about these exercises and abilities that we can cultivate, I find those things really fascinating. But in the last year and a half or so, I've gotten pretty interested in a few different traditions of Buddhism that
Hmm.
talk about, and all of the Buddhist traditions do talk about these things. But there's generally this attitude in those traditions that, yeah, once you deepen your spiritual practice and as you're meditating and doing all, and meditation for them isn't just clearing your mind, there's lots and lots and lots of different, which I'm
Hmm.
sure you know, different varieties of meditation.
Hmm.
But there's a kind of consistent thread that as you deepen your spiritual practice and get better at these things, these abilities and experiences will arise, but they're really just distractions. Like you shouldn't lean into them if your ultimate goal is liberation from suffering and to help other people be liberated from suffering. If you spend your time trying to cultivate the ability to talk to these other spirit beings that appear to you, or if you try to cultivate the ability to, see outside of your mind and see other things, you can do that. But at the end of your life, you're going to look back and be like, all I did is kind of learn some tricks. I don't know if I believe that that's really true or not,
Hmm.
that it's just tricks and doesn't have any value. But it seems like you're deeply interested in cultivating a spiritual practice, and you said that the only thing that you can kind of really control in your life is who you are and what your inner self is. So I'm wondering, as you're trying to do that and trying to deepen your life and be a better person and pursue whatever your ultimate aims are, how do these abilities fit into that? Do they really have a use, or are they really just kind of like neat tricks that you can learn to do?
Yeah, that's interesting. Because yeah, ultimately in Buddhism, they could see it as an attachment, right? Which would lead to suffering. I could see that, that it would be a distraction. And yeah, that's interesting because I've heard some other philosophers talk like that too, from Eastern traditions. Who I actually went and asked, if you have this experience, is that normal? And what do you do with it? And they're like, you shouldn't have that experience. You should only be focusing on the void. And and many people follow that, and I respect that. I totally respect that. Um, but I guess because I did go into a lot of those things. But I guess for me, ultimately, I came back um, to what my deeper drive was asking me. And it wasn't happy with, those answers, even though I keep them in mind. I learned about the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and different areas of Buddhism and dream yoga. And ultimately, I felt I respected that, but my mind was offering up things that were helping me in my life. And I wasn't at the place where I guess in a way I would call this my version of a middle path. Um, is to maintain the awareness that we can be engaging in things that are ultimately suffering, right? And that we can tamp down some of those things that we want, and those things that recognize that we can be the creator of a lot of pain for ourselves by wanting things. But at the same time, the deeper part of me was offering up information and situations where I was able to help my family through this with the loss of my father, help other people who had lost people, and I wasn't asking for these things, you know? So I had to reconcile the idea that this was who I was because I wasn't looking and I wasn't asking. And it was making a profound difference. And so I specifically remember talking at a Deepak Chopra came to Whistler, Canada, where I lived, and I asked him, and this is what he talked about. You know, you should just be focusing on the void, and none of this should be, a factor or a part of it, right? And I thought about that for a long time, and it's it. I still have visions when I'm a very deep meditator. I mean, I meditate an hour a day, and I have for over 20 years, and things come true. I can't explain it; they just do. Richard's getting used to this now. And sometimes they're things as simple as I had one the other day. Um, I have created this temple in my mind that I've had for 20 years since the very beginning. And once in a while, like it never changes, it's always the same. Once in a blue moon, and I'm super relaxed, especially when it's been almost an hour, something will come in. And all I'm doing is clearing off, but I'm in a place of comfort. You know, I built a place that is comfortable to me. Something will come in. So just a few days ago, this strange vision, without going into the whole thing, came in like a cloud came in, a strong discolored part of the air came in low, and it was very strange. I won't tell the whole thing, but I wrote it all down, told Richard when I wake up, the usual. And anyhow, it turned out that day we got a massive part of the fire clouds from the Canadian fires. And the air quality went from, 30 to like 110 or 120 or something like that, went to quite an unhealthy level. And I don't know why I get that. I have weird things like that, but, but they've happened so much in my life that give me little pieces of information to navigate my day. Sometimes they seem so insignificant, I don't understand them. That to answer your question, part of me doesn't feel like it's right to deny this part that is there. It's not harming anything. It's not, I don't think it's creating a distraction. It's actually just helping me navigate my life and helping me be aware for my loved ones, how we should navigate our lives. So it is kind of this interesting question that you ask. And it's an interesting sort of philosophical challenge, of how do you navigate that? But I've always been fascinated by that. How do you navigate that? And so I suppose my positioning has always just been to navigate as best I can with the things that are coming, but to always keep that in mind that we can and do create our own suffering and attachments. And I think that's how I navigate it. I just do my best. And I'm not an extremist in any way. So I don't go full in one direction. I've tried so many things. I've been to the Ramtha school. I've done Taoist retreats. I've done this and that and whatever. And every single one, I immerse in the information. I love what I learn in every single one of them. But I always bring myself closer to center. Like I never go and full on this or full on that. I come in and I try to bring the wisdom in the way I walk through life. It's the best I can do. It's the best I can do. Long answer to your question.
Oh, it's a
But
good answer. The one thing I would
thank you.
add to it is that as I've gotten more acquainted with like all the wide variety of like traditions of Buddhism, I've realized that the sort of Deepak Chopra just focus on the void thing is about the most nihilistic and like negative interpretation of Buddhism that exists. And there are all these
Mm.
traditions that would look at it and say, no, there's like so much more fullness and love and goodness in the world that we're trying to focus on. And so I think if that's all that there was is just the void, then I would say, well, distract me from it,
Well, for
please.
meditation, he's saying for
Sure.
meditation. Yeah,
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 yeah, sure. But these other traditions would also say like, no, in meditation, you don't just want to focus on nothingness. You want to focus on the plenitude, the fullness of all things. And I kind of lean towards even in meditation saying, well, if the whole purpose of the practice is just to immerse myself in a void, I would rather just be distracted. But I
See, to me, it kind of sounds like,
yeah.
Mhm.
just focus on, it's like giving you the cars to, or keys to a
The
car,
keys.
but saying just
Hmm.
focus on the keys. Don't start the
Yeah,
car or go anywhere. Just hold on to the keys. Like, well, that's kind of pointless. The point of the keys is to get into a car to drive somewhere. So that's what
yeah.
I see when they say just focus on void. No, because what if that's the start of how you get your brain to get to all the other places? Don't
Well,
just stick to the beginning, right?
right. And that's what, for example, at the Ramtha School, that's they talk about the void a lot. You're focusing to go into the void, but the void is the full potential of everything else.
Yeah.
They would say that's where you drop your intentions. And even Deepak, because I mean, he would say in the void, that's where you drop your intentions as well. The
Right.
sutras, that's where you drop in the sutras. And so so yeah, I like that. You get the keys to the car, you want to use the keys. Yeah,
Yeah. Want to
totally.
drive the car. Don't just
I
sit in the
resonate.
car with the keys, right?
Yeah,
Katie,
yeah.
go ahead.
I know we're winding down here, and it might be a bad time to bring up this very deep topic, but I'm really curious to know Tracy's answer to this. Um, I kind of believe that perhaps some of these abilities are why these secret societies, it's a secret they're keeping because we're all very
Mm.
powerful and we can manifest, right? We can manifest and change our reality through lucid dreaming, through astral travel, through out of body experiences. And I'm curious, are you familiar with Thomas Campbell and the Big Toe books? And I want to know your opinion on, are we living in kind of like a matrix? What is your thought on
Are we in a simulation? Yes,
that?
Thomas Campbell, yeah, from the Monroe Institute. I can't say I've read his book, Toe. No. But I am familiar with some of his stories, and Thomas Campbell was one of the original explorers with Robert Monroe, right? He did some of those incredible explorations, and he was able to have out of body experiences, and I think has had joint out of body experiences with his son, and he is a profound thinker. But to say I'm up to date on what he's talking about, definitely not. But you're asking, is it possible, or what do I think about reality being a simulation? And it sure would explain everything. I'll say that just for a short answer. Um,
Explains 2025, anyways. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I will say this. I always consider it.
Mhm.
I always consider it just like all the other possibilities because I do believe that if it were true, we wouldn't be able to prove it. We're nowhere near the ability to be able to know if that would be true. Some people just absolutely say no, and I respect that, but I just think we are babies in a way. We we just wouldn't know if that was happening. And when I just think about where we are now and the trajectory it looks like we're on with artificial intelligence and how it looks like it's going to be exponential growth that we can't conceive of. And that it's so easy to trick the mind right now. There's this thing called phantom limb, right? If they were to take your arm away, put a wall up, and have a fake arm, and they were to tickle it with a feather, if you focused on it long enough, it would trick your brain, and your brain would have the same sensations as though you have an arm, right? So, just based on some things like that, I think it would be undetectable. And I just think we're on a trajectory. I'm repeating myself. That is unfathomable currently. And quantum computers, the big wild card. I think we have no idea what their potential is. I just think that for me, it's possible. I just see that there's a pathway um, that that could be possible. So I just can't rule it out. I know some people will think that's absolutely crazy, but I don't know. I just don't think we have the ability to know.
It's a good answer. I'm in the same.
And
I
it's
don't know if
not
that's a good
crazy in
answer,
this
but
field of study. Nothing's crazy. Like that's why we
yeah,
explore every angle, every, and we don't, all three of us don't agree on everything or always with the guests, but it's the point is to look at everything and to collect everything because someday maybe something will click. And like you said, the synchronicities, like you're mentioning, like, we all have that to a certain degree. I think yours is a lot more amped up, but let's say you dream about a red mailbox all of a sudden the next day you take a street you never seen before and there's that bloody red mailbox and you're like, boy, I dreamt about that mailbox last night. So we all
yeah.
have that. I think you're a lot more of a magnet, you're more practiced, and you're probably innately more built to receive this
I might just be more
frequency.
focused on it too. I
Yeah,
might
and
just be,
yeah,
yeah,
and you worked hard on it. I mean, to develop, what you've done over the years. You do a lot of lectures. The one that we were saying about how I think are we the quantum computers we're looking for?
yeah,
How human
yeah,
consciousness might actually be parallel to advanced technology. Like if we could advance our consciousness so freaking high, we wouldn't need technology. I could reach out
yeah,
to Michael just via my mind and say, "Hey, Michael, are you ready for Friday?" Or what? We would have such an amazing ability, I think. But that is something I fear that AI and our current technology is distracting us more from our abilities to increase as psionics. Maybe they'll change. Maybe there'll be a big wave like Dungeons and Dragons, and everybody's going to try being, a psionic or something like that. But it's great because the research is there from people like yourselves that have been exploring this for a long time, even when it was a subject that was cuckoo in the
yeah,
community of cuckoos. You know what I mean? Like that to me
yeah,
seemed crazy. Like you can't
yeah,
pick and choose in ufology. You have to go where the data is, right?
yeah,
And
totally.
go ahead.
I just want to add, I think a great place for people to look if they're still questioning is going to be the research that Diane Hennessy Powell is going to be bringing out, because she's looking to really apply scientific rigor to prove this with autistic savants, right? And so that will be key, important research to open the doors even more for people.
It's an amazing thing what the human brain can do. I was going to tell you guys, just because I'm thinking about this now, but my father was visually impaired. His whole side of the family, all my aunts and uncles, they're all blind, a whole lot of them.
Wow.
But what was funny is that they could be in a room, like my aunt could walk around and she knew where everything was in the house. She knew where people were just by the shift of energy. Like she didn't use her eyes, she would just use her
Wow.
hearing, which you realize when we focus let's say like you would be blinded for 7 days. You said you would
Yeah, the
practice that.
blindfolded work.
All
Yep.
your senses are heightened because you're no longer depending on the one that we all depend on is seeing is believing. I say that's bullshit. Seeing is not
Right.
believing. Our eyes could deceive us.
Yeah.
Use other things or other senses tell us the truth as well. And you guys know this. You meet somebody, you go to shake their hand, and there's just something's not right with that person, just their
Yeah.
energy or the way they look at you, and you could tell right away. And I think that's part of that. There's something that tells you something about other people. Like we all have that innate ability, but again, it's less practice or people don't trust it, which I always think is amazing. It's like, well, I
And they're
knew that
told not to trust it,
they're told not to trust it because as long as
Yeah.
somebody says please and thank you, you'll do something. Like even if it's a serial killer, please get inside the car. Okay, well he said please, even though when your whole instincts is like don't get into the car, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think this is a fascinating subject. I do think it's related to this. You were mentioning last time you were on with Michael and I think Richard was on there too. But you were talking about how the left side of the brain, if you're more left side, you might not be able to remember things that are so far out of the box because it
Yeah, it
just
was
won't
just my
compute.
own little pet theory. And I
I
remember Michael was like, I think it would be the opposite, right?
Yeah.
No,
You,
I have
because I
not stopped
was,
thinking about that comment that you've made. I'm like, she's on to something, and I've been obsessed over it ever since. And like, I'm finding out all the right brain people, left brain. It's amazing. But anyways, you motivated
it's
me
a
to look into
fun
that.
area to sort of dabble in and think about, really, with how memories are encoded and regular narrative memories versus trauma memories.
Mm.
They're encoded in different parts of the brain, right? Like one part's kind of in the left brain, one's more in the emotional brain. That, along with the right brain, left brain, I mean, it might be a little bit too general, but, I always, I mean, of course, what informs is your own experience, right? And that whole right brain thing for me was just a question I always had for myself. Like, is it possible? I called it the messy bedroom theory. I know where everything
Yeah.
is, but would it be more difficult? I mean, clearly they have mastership over our minds beyond what we do, right? They have the ability for cognitive manipulation,
Screen
so
memories and
memory manipulation,
yeah,
all sorts of things, right? They're way beyond us. Oh shoot, what was I going to say? Um,
about being right
oh,
brain, left
oh
brain.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But so I just wondered if, you know, for myself being more on the spectrum of right, my mind thinks more abstract. It just does, especially when I have the opposite with me all the time. It's
Yeah,
so
Richard.
obvious,
Yeah, yeah. It's like
right?
being married to a chess grandmaster, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
He is like linear thoroughbred, you know, and I am like a sprawling banyan tree. And so he likes the way my mind works. I like the way his
Opposites
mind works.
attract, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I revere that. He reveres a few of these things, you know. But it's hard sometimes to be in the sprawling banyan tree and get your point across because there's so many thoughts going on at the same time, and that's what just made me think, like, that frustration that I have in organizing things and sometimes organizing ideas into a paper or even just reading. Um, I it made me question: would we be harder to control? Would it be harder to control the memories of a Banyan style brain? But would it be easier if the brain was compartmentalized and linear? And I just speculated that might be the case. But then Michael made a good point that it could be the opposite, or that you thought it might be the opposite, right? That
Yeah.
a more filed version would be more
Harder to
difficult,
tamper with, or
harder to tamper with, that it might be more structured in a good way, in a protective way. But, just from my own thinking, I just thought, well, you know, everyone on the spectrum reports close encounters and experiences. However, I know Grant Cameron was one of the people pointing out that a lot of artists he feels that they're higher in the amount of reports, right? I don't know if that's true or not. Well, I asked someone else who had done thousands of interviews, and he said he'd never thought of that before, but he thought that might be true as well from all the interviews he did. So I don't know, but
they might just be more open to being interviewed and talking about their experiences too, though, right?
maybe,
But it's
yeah,
well
yeah,
worth looking into because that might have a huge role to play in disclosure as a whole. I was saying, like, why is the general public not interested? Well, what are we dealing with? Is there more creatives? Is there more analytical? And the people that I just say they're apathetic or neutrals, they don't care either way. Those are probably
yeah,
the worst. It's like usually when there's something that happens, pick a side, yes or no, not neutral, because neutral just goes
yeah,
with the flow. Whatever happens, happens. And I think I would never be that person. I have to pick a side.
yeah.
Tracy, where could people find you if they want to reach out, look for your work? Where could people look to find a Tracey Garbutt Dolan?
It's hard to find me, to be honest.
It's like the movie
Um,
Taken. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's a new documentary that just came out by Darcy Weir. And I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be out, but I'm in that one along with a bunch of wonderful people.
What's it called?
As What's that?
What's it called?
Psychics and the Phenomenon. And I mean, if people want to find me and reach out, there's Richard Dolan members where Most of the time we can keep up with email, not always, but I can be reached there. I do have a couple of social media channels, but I'm just going to be completely honest. I am not a big social media person. It is extremely minimal. But I do have Instagram. It's Tracey Garbutt Dolan. Same with Facebook. But I'm just warning people. Because of the way I am,
I
my
can attest to that
brain.
too. I can attest to the social
Yeah,
media.
I
Uh,
I just I I don't have a thick skin, and I can take what people say very personally. I wish I had a thicker skin. But so a way to safeguard is not to pay
I
too
don't
close of
blame you.
attention to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I appreciate the support, and I do love hearing people's stories. So those are really the only places I am right now. Richard is pushing me to have a website, but I'm just not there yet. So
Yeah.
thanks for
He's
asking,
he's
though.
pushing you to get yourself more out there, right? Like present your work.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right now I just really lecture and I'm doing interviews mainly because of the documentary. But I mean, the reason why I do it is because I really believe that there's something here for us all to talk about, to discover about ourselves. And that in doing so, this is my personal opinion and my personal experience, it brings another level of fulfillment to life
Yeah.
when we look at the deeper part of ourselves. So it's really why I do it. Just encouraging other people to do the same. If they're searching for that fulfillment in their life, there's another dimension there of us that is so beautiful, you know?
So you're both beautiful people. At contact or all these events, I can't find anybody to say a bad word about you guys. And trust me, I've looked. I can't find anybody.
Oh,
I'm
I'm
joking.
sure they're there. Yeah.
I'm joking. But no, you
Thank
guys are
you.
an absolute pleasure. And your insight, seriously, Tracy, is great. And I think we all agree with Richard. You should definitely, put your work out there. I'm still going to pick your brain about the left side,
I am
right side
happy
stuff, because if I work on
anytime.
his bloody book, I'll need to pick somebody's brain,
Oh,
a
I
few
love
people.
talking about it. Grant Cameron and I were just like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah." We were having so much fun because we're all about that.
Yeah.
So
Huge
anytime you
connection
guys want to
between the
reach
two.
out and you want to discuss these types of things, even just off the record, I absolutely love this.
Well, I got
So it's
tons
been
of questions
my
for you.
total pleasure being here
Yeah.
with the three of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you, guys.
Are you paying attention?